Okay, that's fine. Then the next one that would be my number one choice for a liner. The next one would be the Celadon, and I have a sample here. This is on probably the H550. You see the H550 has iron in the clay body. So I know, when I grew up in the 60s and 70s, so it's in the uncomfortable period. Okay? But some people are really excited by it, and it's just, my aesthetics shouldn't really your aesthetics, okay? You'll also see that on top of the H550, we've got a white slip and a black slip. So you'll see what the Celadon does over the clay body, the black slip, and the white slip. Now, if you had your dark blue slip under this, you would get a much more blue color underneath the clear glaze, and you'll get a slightly bluey green color because it's like putting colored glass over top of things. Okay? So if you're using slips, the two glazes that I would recommend if you want the colors to come through nicely are the Celadon and the DeBose Clear. So the thickness of application for Celadons is different. Okay? This Celadon that we have here doesn't melt quite as flat and as evenly as the clear. If I used the tongs to dip this, and I fired it, and I didn't clean up the marks, those tong marks would show. Okay? So Celadon doesn't run in the kiln, and DeBose Clear really doesn't run too much at all. But I would put this on in a medium to thick coat. So Celadon, medium to thick coat. Celadon is an Asian glaze invented probably in China a couple thousand years ago, first examples. And it gets its blue color from slight impurities in the glaze, and it's a very small percentage of iron that gives it that nice color. Some of you have seen some samples out there of Celadons gone wrong, fired in oxidation. What we're doing is firing in something called a reduction atmosphere, which means that we cut off the oxygen to the kiln at the top temperature, and the pieces themselves start stealing oxygen, or the air starts stealing oxygen from the glazes on your pots. If that was fired in an electric kiln to the same temperature, you'd probably just get kind of a milky, clearish glaze with maybe some little bits of green in it. You won't get that nice copper red. So we're firing in reduction, and that changes all the colors of things. Okay? So we've got the DeBose Clear, we've got the Celadon. There's another one here that you might want to use for a liner glaze, and it's called white salt. It's
especially with the spiders.
Go for it. Wayback Machine. White salt. White salt is a liner glaze that was developed for using in salt and soda kilns, but we use it here in the studio. A lot of people like it because it's one of those glazes that looks different thin than thick. If you have a thin coat on it, you can see on the edges here that it has a bit of a tannish color to it, all right? So lots of people like to play with that. Catriona in the studio uses it on things with the faceting, and the edges of the marks all sort of poke out through the glaze and give you these nice variations in color. This is a glaze that it's a pretty good liner. It's not as, I wouldn't say it's as good as the Celadon or the DeBose, but it does a nice job. And it needs to be put on in, I would say, a medium coat. If you put it on too thin, you'll get a lot of the brown stuff showing through, which may not be what you want.
Tan lines.
Tan lines.
Mine's starting to get crazy. I have a little bowl and I keep baking garlic in it, and the glaze wasn't crazing when I made it. Now it's like oozing out a lot.
Okay, well, heating and cooling things will open up those cracks even more. Okay, so the three glazes that are what I would call liner glazes are the Celadon, the Clear, and the white salt. Okay?
That one shows slip through too.
It will to a degree, but it'll also mask things out a bit. Something that some of you might want to start trying, but I would only try it on tests today. You see that god-awful picture at the end there? Pass that down.
Awful. God awful.
this is actually the celadon glaze with copper oxide painted on top. So if you want to do something called overglaze painting, these three glazes are the best ones for that. Now, we have a whole bunch of stains there, and I'm going to do a demonstration on this in a couple of weeks, but if you wanted to find out what those stains did today, you could dip a couple of your pieces, your test pieces, into glaze, and you could try out these colors. You just have to figure out how to record your results, okay?
It's the same as their fiber dye.
What did you say was carbon?
It's the
This
same
is
as their
celadon,
fiber dye.
and this is
and
copper carbonate, actually.
just different depending
in
on
one of
what's
those
in the
jars
glaze.
there.
But
Right.
You'll also notice that when we're dipping these tests, we're only dipping them halfway, okay? And that's a good idea. You don't have to have the glaze all the way to the bottom. Some of you are going to do something called double dipping. Only do that on tests today, okay? And only do it on tests that are dipped halfway. One glaze, it sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually the way the whole thing works. If you have a very stiff glaze A and a very stiff glaze B, if you overlap them, all of the combinations of the oxides and the materials in the glaze can actually melt that glaze a lot faster, and it can run all over the place. So you need to test, if you're going to put one glaze on top of another, you need to test it first. And every year, students come up with some new and interesting ideas and results. So I don't want to stop you from experimenting, but I don't want your experiments to ruin those kiln shelves. Those are about $100 each. And when your piece runs all over it, it kind of screws up the shelf for everybody else in the future. So that's what we're trying to protect here. You hand me that one there. I'm sort of going to the next color. This one is called Porcelain Chino. Where do you think that's from?
no, show me the extra color.
So that was missing. So it definitely sounds very Japanese.
So that's a liner as well?
That's which?
Liner as well?
Yeah, it can be a liner, but I'm moving into the glazes that are going to be going onto the outsides of the pots now. Not that these can't go onto the outsides. They can go all over the pieces. But I'm talking, the insides, as a teacher, socially responsible person, I don't want you to poison anybody. You have to realize that you can say, well, I've got that black glaze on the inside of the bowl, and I'm never going to use it at home with tomato soup in it. But if you get hit by a bus and your stuff goes to a garage sale, what happens? These pots are going to last longer than us if they don't get broken. I mean, I have 2,000-year-old
longer if
Chinese
they don't
pots,
last
okay?
longer.
They last longer than we do. They don't rot, okay? So you need to be responsible about what you do. You can't just put a little sticker on it and say, don't use this. That'll wash off, okay? So I just think if you keep the slightly poisonous or the least desirable things out of it, then you're playing it safe.
What's so god awful about that jug?
It's heavy.
Did you make it? Is that yours?
Yeah.
But it's got cute
That's why you said
cheeks.
god
No,
Well, I
Greg
can
made
say,
it.
yeah.
You can tell from the
Anything
smoke.
of mine, I can be critical
Look at his
about.
cute little cheeks.
The pinched cheeks.
It's like the handles.
So a Chino glaze is a pretty interesting one, and you'll notice that it's doing a lot of different things. Some students, this becomes their favorite glaze. It does interesting things. Chinos are generally kind of a very light orangish color where they're thin, and where they get thicker, they tend to be sort of whitish, okay? And you'll see that this one is picking up, some colors from the clay, and you'll also notice this sort of blackish stuff happening at the top. That's called carbon trapping. And when you get enough reduction in the kiln, you'll get that starting to affect things. So lots of people, when they fire, they'll actually just put Chino on a piece, and that'll be it for the glaze. Now it's absolutely fine for a liner, okay? So it can go all over, but it looks nicest on the outsides where you can start to get the effects of it. And you brown people, you're going to really like this one.
I was like, brown?
Well, you're brown clay, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Or if you have the
Nigga.
if you have the H550, this will look better on the 550 than it does on the
Phoenix.
Okay.
Rude.
No, I'm Indian. I would definitely be Indian if I was brown. Right?
Okay, Chino. Okay, one more thing about Chino. If you want to get really interesting surface results from it, it's one of the glazes that I would say, you know, putting it on unevenly gives you more interesting results. So what I would do if I wanted to get lots of interesting action with this Shino would be to do a quick dip, and then I'd probably dip my hand in the glaze and splash some on, okay? And that way I'd get like thick spots and thin spots, and you'll start to see how that adds up in the kiln.
Could you not do that with a brush?
You could do it with a brush, but it looks like you did it with a brush. That's the problem. Okay, so your aesthetics are up to you. Also, what I'm going to show you today, I probably won't even use a brush today. I'm going to show you dipping and pouring. Why do you think that I'm encouraging that as a way to apply glazes?
It's a good way to get an even coat quickly.
Exactly. So if you dip something in, count to a certain number and pull it out, you're going to get the same consistency all over. If you apply it with a brush, you don't know that. And if you apply it with a spray gun, it's even harder. And I'm not going to say no to spraying, but I'm not going to show you any of that today. It's a dip and pour day. How's that sound?
So theoretically, you took the porcelain Shino and put it in a spray gun, you get a thin coat and have whole things fire orange as a result because it's thin.
Probably, but you won't. I would dip a thin coat if you get a better result. Spraying, you usually get spots that don't get any glaze on them.
Hence theoretically.
Hence, theoretically. Okay?